I'm going to show you about transferring your drawing. It's just one method. You will need a piece of tracing paper. You're going to need a 6B drawing pencil. It's a 6B. It's written right here on the base of the pencil, 6B. Okay, and I've got a regular drawing pencil in case I need it. I've also got some colored markers, not pens, markers. And if you use pens, you'll have to be really careful. The other thing you will need is a blank piece of paper. In this case, I'm using watercolor paper, a half sheet. It's fairly thick. You can hear it different when you rattle a piece of watercolor paper versus a piece of regular paper. And you need just some spare paper, like copy paper or drawing paper that maybe has gotten wrinkled or something. So once again, I'm going to need my image that I drew, tracing paper, spare paper, watercolor paper, or whatever paper that you happen to be using, 6B drawing pencil. If you don't have it, you can use another, but you want dark lead if at all possible. Another pencil just in case, some markers, and lastly, you're going to need some type of tape. Hopefully tape with a little bit of release. If it doesn't have good release, then you can just take and put it on your skin for a minute, pull it back off where it won't be quite as tacky. You don't need much tape, just a little bit. Now let me remove these things. First thing I'm going to do is look at my picture, make sure everything's how I want it. It is. And I'm going to take the tracing paper. I can use the whole sheet. If I want to conserve, I can take and use part of the sheet if it will fit. Okay. In my case, I'm going to conserve, and I'm going to take my paper, fold it in half, put it back the other way. What I'm doing is making a crease where I can tear this. Okay, then I'm going to hold it on the edge of the table. I could use scissors, but I'm just going to hold it with that crisp fold that I did on the edge of the paper, and I tore it. So then I'm going to take my tracing paper. My tracing paper happens to be the exact same size as my paper that I drew on now. And I'm going to take and I'm going to tape it only at the top. Only at the top. I'm going to take a colored marker. I'm going to use red. And I'm going to take and trace carefully all of my main outlines . I'm probably going a little faster than I should. I'm also holding my paper down with my other hand to make sure it doesn't move all around on me. Notice I'm starting in this corner and coming down where I won't be dragging my hand through any marker, and try not to smear things. Just tracing my main lines. I'm tracing some of these other lines because these other lines are going to give me a general idea of where to put things in my final piece that I'll be doing from this transfer. You could use a transfer for many different things. If you wanted to have more than one in a artwork that you're completing, if you wanted to transfer it over to do different mediums. And I'm trying to be fairly spot on accurate. Like I said, I'm probably going a little too fast. I'm making a few errors because of it. And I do, in my case, want to get a few of these little extra marks that I have. Now, before I go any further, I want to look at this, make sure that I have everything that I want. I can put a piece of paper up underneath it, look very closely, and make sure that it has everything. I also can lift to be sure that I have all of the parts that I want. When I get finished, I want to make sure I carefully take out tape, because tape a lot of times will tear things. Next, I'm going to also lift this original image up. Remember, if you're removing tape from something, you want your fingers as close as possible to the paper and the tape, and remove it slowly so that you do not tear your paper. Now, that extra paper, that's spare paper that you're going to use, whether it be a piece of, this happens to be a piece that got kind of wrinkled up of my drawing paper that I wouldn't use for drawing, but what I'm going to use it for is up underneath something where I don't want it to smudge on my table, where to get on something else or another piece of artwork. Now I'm taking the tape off of this one and I'm putting it to the side where I can reuse it. I'm going to turn it over. This is the front. In fact, just for the case of this video, and since I'm trying to explain to someone, I wrote the word front here. Okay, so then I'm going to turn this over. This is the back of my tracing paper that I just used. I'm going to take my 6B pencil. I need to make sure that it's pretty sharp, because I want as much of this lead as possible to be able to touch the page. What I'm going to try to do is do a very wide line and fairly dark. So I'm going to hold it at an angle, once again touching as much of that lead as possible, and I'm going to cover all of my lines here. I don't have to do it neatly. I just need to make sure. That's the reason I'm using this wide line. Makes things a whole lot faster. I am holding this down with my fingers on the edges. I don't want to get it all over me, and I need to check afterwards if I need to wipe my hands or go wash my hands before I go any further. I don't want pencil smeared on other artwork that I may have or be doing. So I'm just moving this around and getting that graphite from the pencil to cover all of the lines on the tracing paper. And I can reuse this to transfer more than once usually. And if I need more graphite, I'll just go back and put more graphite on it. So don't throw it away. However, I will keep it sandwiched in a piece of spare paper where it doesn't get on other things. So getting all the graphite on here. And I'm holding the pencil to the side. It's getting where it's having a hard time coming off. I'm having to apply a lot of pressure and it's not getting as much. So I'm going to sharpen again. A lot of times you have to do that with a 6B pencil because the graphite will come off quickly. That's what we want. So I'm using the side of the pencil as much as I can, touching. I'm doing wide as I can lines. Those were just for you to be able to see. Make sure I stay up on top of this paper that's just covering my desk. And I have everything. I think I can hold it up to the light to double check. It looks like it's pretty good. Now, I didn't get too much other stuff on my desk. That's good. Sometimes you'll even get your marker off on your other paper. I'm going to leave a clean piece of paper down here. What I'm going to do next is I need to get another piece of watercolor paper. That's what I'm using. You could be using drawing paper. Depends on what you're doing, what kind of paper you would use. So when I put my paper down, I'm going to take my image that I have on the tracing paper. I'm going to flip it back over. Okay. Flipped it back over where I can see the front. And I want to make sure I have it lined up on this paper. I can do that a couple different ways. I can go ahead and tape. Remember, I could put this on my skin to get some of the sticky off of it. And I can tape this paper to my desk or to another paper. I'm going to put this positioned however, wherever I want it on this other paper. If it were a larger one, I could put it over here on the side, maybe if I wanted to. I want to put it right here. So, then I'm going to take, and at the top only, I'm going to put 2 pieces of tape. This is just to help it stay in place. So now I've got my image. It's where I can see the actual, when I drew it in red. This is the back of the tracing paper. This is the new paper I want it to go to. And this is my scrap paper, just to cover my desk. I'm going to put those things to the side. And one thing I didn't really say was on this part, you could use a pencil. It may be harder for you to see. You could use an ink pen. A marker will work sometimes and sometimes it won't. Okay, I just decided to use an ink pen while we're on right now because I want to make sure that I can see, or you can see, what we're doing. And what I found right here beside me was a blue ink pen. That way I won't get it mixed in with the red, and it won't get mixed in so much with the pencil, and I hope you guys will be able to see it better. I want to use it just like I were writing. I don't want to push too hard, but I've got to push hard enough. Too hard will make an indent in my paper. I really don't want that. Not hard enough, it won't transfer. Show you what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to start tracing these lines that where I drew in red. Like I said, you can use whatever colors, and you can actually use pencil. Don't have to have the exact materials. However, you do have to have graphite on the back. Now, you notice that I'm actually still trying to hold it still with my hand. I've done just a little bit. What I'm going to do is just lift it up. It's transferring very well. So, I'm going to not push quite as hard, because I don't want really dark lines. And all I'm doing is tracing over my lines here on my tracing paper. and they are transferring to the other paper that I want to use for this particular artwork. You could do this with any image that you've done, and then you can reuse and reuse this template, stencil, whatever term you want to call it, to do a transfer. And if it's your art to start with, your drawing, you can do this as far as tracing it as many times as you want. Then I'm going to take, before I take that tape off, I want to really look. I want to look here. I want to look at my original. I want to make sure that I've gotten everything, even the smallest little details, if I think I'm going to need them. I noticed I left off a couple little things right here that might throw me off, so I'm going to go back in and see if I can straighten this up and get those little details in. See? I like that better. Now, the other thing is, every time you take an image from one place to another, things change a little bit. And what I'm noticing right now is I changed and give this flamingo more of a flat head. So I think I've got everything transferred, so I'm going to slowly take this off. I don't want to tear this or my paper because I want to be able to use it again. Remember, taking tape off fingers as close as possible. And then when I'm storing it for use later, I'm going to make sure that I have it on top of another paper so that that pencil isn't getting on something else. Because if I sit here and say I would have smeared a little bit, I start getting smudges and things, and I don't want smudges on other artwork. Put that to the side. Once again, I'm looking, and what I'm doing, I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at mine here. If there are any differences, I also may decide that what I want to do is actually look at my original image that I did this from. Okay, the original image that I got this from. So make sure, is there anything? Oops. Is there anything that I want to change? Definitely want to change this head up a little bit. I changed some things around during that process. So I'm going to straighten that out. And I'm going to give this back a little bit of a curve. Whenever I'm happy with it, that's when I'm done. And I'm going to also take it off of my background paper. Making sure I keep my fingers close when I'm taking any tape off. And as usual, for me, when I'm storing it before I do any other work, I make sure I lay some type of paper. This happens, I happen to have this extra tracing paper. It could be a scrap piece of drawing paper that I want to lay on top of it. Always make sure it's not something that's going to come off. This is from another time when I did a tracing. And you see where the marker actually came off on the paper when I was doing it, when I was doing that back. That's the reason why it's good to keep your work protected. Now it's ready for whatever the next thing is that you want to do to it. Always double check your work and make sure that the image is exactly what you want. Change anything you need to change. Okay? That's all for today. Have a great day. Bye-bye.